I think we should already be over 100K. It's probably still some price suppression going on, but realistically, it should be over 100K, I think. And once we cross that barrier, it'll go up very quickly. At least I think so.
Okay.
Just looking at the macroeconomic environment, looking at the massive amounts of debt, interest to service the debt, and rampant printing, rate cuts, it's all tying together and pointing in the direction of up for Bitcoin. And the ETFs, whether you like them or not, are a great illustration of this. So a lot of countries waited for the US to push out the ETFs. Hong Kong was waiting for the US, Australia was waiting, and then SEC said, okay, now they have almost 1 million Bitcoin. Hong Kong has 10,000 something, Australia has 100 something. So if you wait, then yeah, you're gonna fall behind.
In the wake of growing financial instability and global economic tensions, Bitcoin is gaining more attention as a possible safe haven. In light of worries about inflation, the national debt, and the waning confidence in conventional currencies, Bitcoin is being viewed by many as a symbol of resilience and financial freedom. The CEO of Jan3 and passionate advocate of Bitcoin, Samson Mow, is boldly forecasting a sharp increase in the price of the cryptocurrency, setting an astounding goal of $1 million as demand for decentralized assets rises. Samson claims that organizations, exchange-traded funds, and even whole nations are beginning to recognize Bitcoin as a means of achieving economic independence and sovereignty, rather than only as an investment. In today's video, we delve into Samson Mow's vision for Bitcoin, his ambitious predictions, and the crucial role this digital currency could play in shaping the future of global finance. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more insights. Enjoy the video.
And even though we're not at all-time highs right now, I would say there's a resurgence of interest, and that helps definitely. But when people don't really understand Bitcoin, price is sort of the indicator they're going off of. Like, is it going up? And is there hype around it? And that kind of opens the door for discussions. But the prevailing theme, I would say, is people in countries that need Bitcoin are more interested just naturally than people from wealthier countries or governments in wealthier countries. Those ones are more interested in protecting what they have, seeking to regulate and control, whereas countries in Latin America, the global south, they're looking for money to come in, either through tourism or from investment. And they're not worried about, do we have all the right regulations in place? It's sort of more about the people and the prosperity and just letting them make a living. Recently, I'm pointing a lot more to Argentina and the deregulation of money.
Okay.
Because I think that is a viable path too. Simply because it is hard to get a legal tender framework in place. That requires a lot of conviction and a deep understanding of Bitcoin, and maybe also not having anything to lose. Whereas other countries, they may not have all those things, but they also don't have a majority in the parliament or the Senate that would allow them to pass these types of laws easily.
Interesting.
So I think it's easier to push for deregulation of money or removal of capital gains that allows Bitcoin to be used as money, like in Switzerland and Lugano.
Yeah.
So it's an easier fight, I think. Or even approaching countries that don't have a central bank, that don't have their own currency. Those are also low-hanging fruits that we can pursue. There is definitely a good chance that Panama could be a Bitcoin country. Other countries, Africa, we're not as interested in, simply because it seems to be less geopolitically stable. Even Latin America is not that stable, right? Like Ecuador had some tumultuous upheaval with the government being ousted, and it's to be determined, but generally Latin America is more stable than the rest, so that's sort of our focus right now. I think the legal tender law is the most difficult, so we don't really focus too much on that. We talk about it, but I think we're more focused on trying to get them to do a Bitcoin bond, or maybe do something like a Bitcoin strategic reserve, where they just buy Bitcoin and accumulate it.
Okay.
I think it's much easier a lift than going to full legal tender.
Right.
Because there's also the IMF that's breathing down a lot of these countries' necks, and they don't really like Bitcoin, it seems. But that might change. But for now, it's still a point of contention, and it does weigh heavily on a lot of the presidents and prime ministers. There are other places like Indonesia, you can't use it for payments, and We were talking with the former governor Ridwan Kamil, and bringing that up too. And then he stepped away from politics, and now it seems like he's coming back. But generally, there's like a tide. People come and then they go, and you have to make sure that you're at the right time, at the right place at the right time to catch these opportunities as they present.
Samson Mow draws attention to the growing interest in Bitcoin around the world, despite the fact that its price hasn't yet reached its historical peak. He points out that changes in the price of Bitcoin frequently provoke public discussion, particularly in places like the Global South and Latin America, where people view it as a means of boosting the economy. According to Samson, incorporating Bitcoin and employing tactics like Bitcoin bonds to draw in additional capital might be very beneficial for nations that rely heavily on tourism. He does, however, recognize the limitations, including those in particular regions like Indonesia and the IMF's opposition to broader Bitcoin use. When encouraging the usage of Bitcoin, Samson emphasizes the significance of timing, cautioning that waiting may result in lost opportunities. He thinks the price of Bitcoin, which he says is being repressed right now, should be above $100,000 and may climb quickly above that if macroeconomic variables like debt, money creation, and rate cuts play a role. Despite its promise, he acknowledges that Bitcoin is still seen as dangerous, particularly in conservative areas like Taiwan, Japan, and Korea, where adoption is slowed down by this impression. Now let's get back to the interview.
I think we should already be over 100K. It's probably still some price suppression going on, but realistically, it should be over 100K, I think. And once we cross that barrier, it'll go up very quickly. At least I think so.
Okay.
Just looking at the macroeconomic environment, looking at the massive amounts of debt, interest to service the debt, and rampant printing, rate cuts, it's all tying together and pointing in the direction of up for Bitcoin. The biggest challenge is just perception of Bitcoin as a risky thing. I was in Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and a lot of the concern is like it's risky, and the people there kind of have their own limitations set already. They're like, we are too conservative to do something like Bitcoin. And maybe we'll wait until, let's say, the US does something, and then we'll do something. So it's a very wait and see attitude, and a self-imposed restriction that we are too conservative. And that's the biggest barrier. And I try to explain to them that being risky and conservative is like two sides of a circle. If you're trying to back away from risk, or trying to be more and more conservative, eventually you go to the risk side, because Bitcoin is a technology, and if you're shying away from it, your risk is that you miss out on that technological revolution. It's like cars are risky. We're gonna not use cars, and we'll stick with the horses, and then you miss out on automobiles, and of course you're gonna miss out economically. Same for airplanes. Airplanes are risky, especially if it's Boeing. So are you gonna avoid airplanes, not have a national airline? Maybe, but you're also gonna miss out on opportunities too. So I think that's the number one barrier. People think, we are conservative, or Bitcoin is risky and we cannot cross that chasm to Bitcoin. But then I try to present the reality, which is you will cross that chasm eventually. So it's either you choose to do it now or after the US. And the ETFs, whether you like them or not, are a great illustration of this. So a lot of countries waited for the US to push out the ETFs. Hong Kong was waiting for the US. Australia was waiting. And then SEC said, okay, now they have almost 1 million Bitcoin. Hong Kong has 10,000 something. Australia has 100 something. So if you wait, then you're gonna fall behind. Trump is gonna probably win. He'll create the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And even if he does 20% of what he said he's going to do, that's still 200,000 coins. So how many coins will Germany have? Or pick a country, Argentina. The window, I think, is closing very rapidly to accumulate a significant chunk of Bitcoin. And people haven't done that mental calculus yet. Like, how much has been bought by the ETFs? A massive chunk. How much has MicroStrategy accumulated? A massive chunk. Can another company do a MicroStrategy and get 250,000 Bitcoin? I don't think so, because you're also fighting MicroStrategy and all the new ones like Semler and Metaplanet and the ETFs at the same time, and potentially a strategic reserve from the US. So there's not a lot of Bitcoin left to fill coffers to the tune of 250,000 BTC.
You sold it to me.
But the scarcity is just not something people can comprehend because they live in a fiat world where you can catch up by printing. So let's say, for example, Germany wants more nuclear plants. They don't have the know-how or the engineers or the components needed. They can still kind of print euros to catch up, right? So the concept of catching up through printing is just so deeply entrenched that they can't really comprehend that this thing is finite and there is no catching up.
Samson Mow believes that Bitcoin should already be valued at over $100,000, but he suggests there is likely some form of price suppression. He anticipates that once Bitcoin crosses this significant price barrier, it will rise quickly due to macroeconomic conditions such as massive debt levels, rising interest rates to service that debt, rampant money printing, and eventual rate cuts, all factors pushing Bitcoin's trajectory upward. He identifies the biggest challenge to Bitcoin adoption as the perception of it being risky, especially in conservative regions like Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. Samson explains that people in these areas have self-imposed limitations. Viewing Bitcoin as too risky, they often adopt a wait-and-see approach, holding back until countries like the United States take action. He uses the analogy of technological advancements, arguing that avoiding Bitcoin is like refusing to use cars or airplanes for fear of risk, which ultimately leads to missed economic opportunities. In contrast to the fiat system, which allows countries to generate money to catch up, Mow highlights the limited supply of Bitcoin. As institutions, exchange-traded funds, ETFs, and even governments like a potential strategic reserve under a Trump administration may quickly amass Bitcoin, he cautions that nations that put off investing in the cryptocurrency may soon find themselves far behind. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay informed on the latest in finance and crypto. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.